They modeled that based on their theses off the early pastoralists. They were
Correct.
pastoralists.
The early southern
That's what they
Crusading
were.
pastoralists during the Neolithic period. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, but I wouldn't keep that up too long. I actually did that to get the people to talk
Yep.
because I like to, entertain the people, get people to talk about it. So that's not scientific right there. That's just an idea based off what somebody presented.
Got it. Got it. So no, that's interesting. That's interesting. So like, how rare do you
What did
think
I miss, Joe? I heard there was some shit going on.
what's that?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, nothing going on, bro. We just building. What you saying?
Oh no, that was me asking if you read that study.
Yeah. On the pastoralist or the dental thing. I read both
No,
of
I'm
them.
talking to Zuko.
You tell Zuko he likes to, reference studies that he hasn't read.
I have all my studies in my back pocket just in case I need to always bring them out. Every time I fight with the selected individuals, it's the same 12 papers. I got right in my back pocket. I'll be like, I just throw them out.
Yeah.
Like,
Also, when would have the alleles for lactase persistence? When would they have roles within Africa? Right, like when would they have spread within Africa? And like first, most
Well,
importantly, where do they rise and become to be a thing? And then like when did the expansion or the spread of it happen?
Well, I think that we need to accept that we are all the same species, and our species go through the same things, can go through the same things in different areas based off the lifestyle. Pastoralists does not only exist in Africa. The Mongoloids were pastoralists. People in Europe were ancient pastoralists, and people in Africa developed pastoralism. The same way with farming. Farming did not really develop in one place; it developed in multiple places based off lifestyle. So you have different variants of LCT gene or the lactase consistent gene. You have one lactase consistent gene that developed independently in Northeast Africa, Northeast African Levantine corridor. A lot of the pre-Proto Neolithic A, B, and C culture had this because it was already started between that corridor between North Africa anyway. And you have one that drifted from Southern Europe that drifted into the Sahara a long time ago. And they believe that the Fulani have this specific LCT gene from ancient populations that drifted from Southern Europe because you do have people that back migrated into Africa.
Hey,
Prior
Amir,
to those, go ahead.
I want to interrupt you a bit. Have
Go
you
ahead.
seen the studies that show the dates when they date the lactase that European one and all the
Yeah.
populations? You see who has the oldest date
I think the Fulani had the oldest one.
is consistently the Fulani.
Yep, it's the Fulani. The
Older
Fulani
than
had the
North
oldest one.
Africans, older than Europeans. So I think that's hinting at something. And also, I have a hypothesis, and I've asked Sarah Tishkoff about this. I think because if you notice in these studies, they haven't found the lactose persistent genes in like Nilotic people, and some of
Nope.
those have like the longest, at least the ones in Sudan, the longest evidence of the pure type of pastoralism when they're reconstructing pastoral scenes and have people herded the cattle and what they did. Like the parallels are found in those groups. I have a hypothesis that milk from different animals, right, be they horses or sheeps or um, camels and goats, have different um, genetic pressures on the human body, right? Maybe more so than cow milk.
So you,
And I
Correct.
think that some of the diversity you see may be mutations that happened among um, camel drinkers versus goat and sheep
Goat drinkers. Yep. And
versus cattle.
cow.
And
Yes.
cattle may be like the easiest one to digest. And so maybe, the earliest Africans that was doing cattle didn't get some of those mutations. We don't find them like in West Africa in Sudanese Nilotes and stuff like that. They don't have them, but they can still digest milk. So it's something there. We just haven't figured it out. And I
yeah,
think
Yeah.
that
It's
may
a, it's
have
a
something to do with it.
but ask that.
yeah.
But
It's a,
ask that
it's a,
if other populations around the world drink milk from cattle and they develop a lactase persistent gene, how would you reconcile with that? Like, say
Well,
that
maybe they didn't get it
you
from
know,
cattle. Maybe they got it from sheep and goats.
yeah, but
I was listening to a lecture from one of the guys on the Polish team working in the Western Desert. And right now, the earliest date for sheep and goats in Africa is 9,000 years ago, 7,000 BC.
yeah, that Polish team that's the
So
working on that
right there,
cattle domestication in Northern Sudan paper.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which
No,
I'm
no,
waiting to be.
yeah.
I'm waiting to see that published.
Yeah, I mean, you propose a hypothesis, right? But I don't. I mean, it could be a litany of things or reasons why Nilos don't have a lactase persistent allele. But yeah, it's interesting nonetheless. It should be looked into a bit more.
Yeah, I wanted to say, and Moda was a old hunter gatherer population before the drifting into pastoralist groups. But I wanted to talk about that LCT gene and how humans can develop a lot of the same mutations based off what's going on. Like the Indian strand of sickle cell is totally different than the strand that developed in Africa, or the three strands in Africa. Like for example, you study the hemoglobin levels of them, they develop the same similar things based off humans being in those areas. And we only developed sickle cell to fight off malaria. This is what humans do. And this also shows that we all the same species. So I'm just trying to say that pastoralism did not only exist in Africa, pastoralism exists in multiple groups, but Africans had their own variants of it. And you also have people that back migrated. And we know that, R1BVA8, came into Africa as early as probably 8,000 years ago and ended up in Chad 6,500 years ago. And we know the more basal branches of this R1BVA8 signal was found in pre-Sardinian hunter-gatherers. So we cannot disregard back migrations either, because we don't have
So
to.
which lactase persistent alleles are by way outside of the R1B, right? Carriers,
I think
in
the
those
early, I
regions.
think, I
Which
think
one
the
of
early,
those are
mo- I,
backflow migration? And that's
well,
responsible.
I believe that the one from the declarations that you guys have, the Somali and the pastoralists in East Africa have, that's something that developed independently in its own zone. As Austin said, the Nilotes, they have their own thing going. They might just be able to digest it. They've been doing it a long time. But I think the people that was in the Dakhla Oasis, they developed their own mutation compared to the population that was in Western zones. And I did read the article from 2023, and it said that the Fulani have some of the oldest variants from SLC 245. But a few years ago, they said that they got it from ancient European hunter gatherers. I mean, ancient European pastoralists.
Right, they did, and I can think back even 15 years ago maybe, where the Fulani we was arguing about this shit, and the Fulani. I see the Fulani got the oldest date, so how did they get it from this other group?
Yeah, so, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. I think that if you read the article from 2023, it's saying that the Fulani represent the earliest people in the Sahara. And not to mention, we know from the article from 2018, people in the early Green Sahara, they had, based off the little, what they postulated, the SNPs that was there. We know E1B1A was there. And I don't want to base this off haplogroups because they only make up less than 1% of your DNA. And we know that R1BVA8 was there. And we know that a clade of A was there. And we know that EM78 was there. So it only makes sense that um, they got the oldest things because a lot of these traits developed independently, probably in that portion of Africa a long time ago.
Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say? In the Sahara, a lot of things happen in that
Yeah.
Sahara.
Amir, someone in the audience is asking about Jebel Ramla.
Jebel Ramallah, as they showed, that's under that they found over there. That's not Jebel Sahaba. Those are pastoralist groups, and their limb proportions was tropical, but they also have mixed features. Matter of fact, you guys can type up Jebel Ramallah and look at how they describe. They exist near the tip of Aswan, Upper Egypt, and Northern Sudan.
Got it. Thank you. Ekwam, go ahead.
Yeah, the Polish guy, that is what his presentation was about. And it's interesting. The site is like a huge mountain, and at the top of the mountain is a lake. So that'd be like some cool shit. It's like a rain-fed lake that's there year-round. Some coolest place to live. But he's going on, and he's the one that brought out those early dates of 9,000 years ago for Ovicaprines. And it's interesting because that site, they only found that site like 20 years ago. And so I always tell people, like, you got to read new books, and you talk about what someone said 50 years ago. it's all types of archaeological sites that didn't even exist back then that they know about now. And when they talked about, someone asked, who were they and where did they go? He said, oh, they were sub-Saharan African. And then he said, well, but they kind of look like Northern Sudanese. But Northern Sudan is sub-Saharan Africa. Then he said, well, they kind of had Mediterranean features. So it's like a mixed bag.
And it goes back to what Shamak Keita say. These people were tropical adapted with Ethio-Somali features. That's all they
Yeah.
were. And and not just that, but it's just looking at. I mean, people talk about Göbekli Tepe all the time. We got to look at what the Polish found with Afad 23. The Nubian structures going back 15,000 years. First, they estimated at 70,000, but then they said it was 15,000, and that predates the structures that you find in Turkey or Anatolia.
What's the location?
Afad 23, AFFAD 23. It's called the Nubian structures.
Yeah, I want.
It was built in house
Afad
structures.
23.
Yeah, I want to get in.
Yep.
Afad 23. Is that Jebel Sabacola?
No, that's something.
Afad 23. All right, yeah.
Yeah.
Good night, y'all. I gotta go to work in the morning.
Okay, Aston. Take care.
Yeah, type up Afad 23.
Good night,
Nubian
brother.
structures.
Yeah.
Peace.
Take care, Aston. Thanks for coming. Equim, go ahead.
I heard you say that Nilo groups can digest milk or something like that. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah. We were just, and they don't carry a lactase persistent allele, but they can digest it.
How can they digest it?
Is it
Like not like Maasai. Like I'm talking like South Sudanese type
Dinka,
groups.
Nuer? Yeah.
Yeah, they drink raw milk.
Yeah. Amir, are you there? So you're probably
I thought they
wondering the
sour.
difference between digesting and just being able to process it.
Meaning like can they digest it and get the benefits with like none of the downsides of it?
Oh, okay. Does it have? Okay,
Or do they just drink it anyways?
that's a good question. So Abu Talib, I don't know if you're trying to answer that question or yo.
Nah, I had a question for Brother
Okay,
Amir, but
yeah,
it's
okay. Well,
something else
yeah,
I'll say
yeah.
that.
We'll come back to you.
Yeah,
Amir, are you there? Or Tim, can you answer that? Do you know?
I was under the impression that there were another gene that was shared by nilots for lactase persistence. Is that not the case?
Not the Dinka
Because
and the Nuer, maybe like the Maasai.
Yeah, like but like Masai, you can't really use them as an average, can you?
No, you can't. They're about 50% Cushitic. So.
I
Yeah.
might be able to answer that. I
Oh,
mean,
go ahead, David. Go ahead.
I read somewhere how like the majority of people of Mongolians don't have the gene to process milk either. Yet they drink a lot of milk during their seasons. I know with Mongolians, like, the reason for that is because they have ways of processing their milk. They create like various dairy products that are fermented and whatnot, and that allows them to digest milk. Maybe, I mean, I don't know if that's what they're doing, the Nilotic peoples, but
Yeah, I meant like raw, unfermented
Yeah,
milk.
my fault, bro.
I know that there are some people who are
Welcome
able
back,
to
man.
drink raw milk
Hey,
that they don't
Zotan.
already pasteurize.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, bro. I got to rotate, man. I really appreciate y'all letting me
Def-
build.
yeah.
I hope
Definitely
we
welcome.
got a few points across. Austin did. He put in work today. That was good. I hope we got something across so we can stop the bickering with one another.
It was much appreciated. Definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, I appreciate you. You gonna shut down the room? Anybody else got any more questions? I don't want to cut nobody's wisdom.
I think Ekwem was
I had a
talking about the lactase persistent, allele missing from the Nilos and them still drinking it, and he's wondering how that like it doesn't like he's wondering if it affects them like
I have to look into that. I have to look into that. I don't like. He may have information on that I don't know about. I thought that they did have that trait that they developed from earlier East Africans that gave it to him, or North Africans that gave it to him, and they practiced. And the thing is that they kept practicing a lot of the customs, so they retained. Compared to people that in North Africa today, a lot of them are cemetery agriculturalists or like Arabs. Arabs today, they wouldn't have that because Arabs, a lot of them don't have the LCT gene anymore. Compared to these pastoralists that still do have it, and especially Nilotes that retain a lot of those old, early customs that they received from Cushitic people a long time ago.
Yeah, I only asked because when I was reading about it, I was reading like some. I forgot the book. I'll have to find it later. But basically, they sour their milk. The only ones that can drink raw milk are the kids, and even then, they end up like fermenting it a lot.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason I asked.
Yeah, you might be right. I agree. A lot of people lost it because you have a lot of Somali who descend from these pastoralists, and a lot of them can't drink milk, because lifestyles change. So people retain it based off
Right.
their lifestyle.
So do you think that like everything Nilo's practice is like stuff that they just retained, or do you like, for example, specifically the bloodletting thing? Do you think like the blood drinking thing is something that they acquired, or like?
I think they developed that on their own. You got to think because they received their pastoralists from Cushitic or intermingling with them for a long time, and not to mention before the Cushitic became Cushitic, they were already mingling with pre-Dinka like people that was drifting up there. And I'm not saying a Dinka is them directly. I'm saying a Dinka like people were already drifting into those portions of the Nile. So my whole thing is that they could have developed that on their own independently, the drinking blood, because other pastoralists don't do that. There may be something only that's unique to them, how they deal with their method of pastoralism. The Maasai people, I think they're a little bit more distinct than the Dinka like people, how they deal with their cow.
Right. So like you sure like the drinking blood thing is not a result of like Islamification?
Oh
It
no
just
no
got.
no 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 no! No, the Dinka don't even. A lot of them don't even practice Islam. No no no! I don't
No,
think.
that's what I'm saying. Like because they're not they didn't adopt Abrahamic religions, like they kept that, whilst other groups who adopted it dropped it because it's obviously it doesn't meet dietary customs.
I mean, according to the Abrahamic faith, it wouldn't. I think that they retain a lot of the older customs that they used
Right.
to practice in that area.
Right. And I only ask this because I know that a lot of Indo-European groups drank blood. Some Mongolians I've read still drink blood. So that's the only reason I bring it up. But
And that,
no.
and that's actually important what you brought up, King, because that goes to show how, regardless of language family, how a lot of humans still practice a lot of ancient customs that predates even language families. You get what I'm saying?
Mm.
Regardless of who they are and what they look like, you know.
Yeah, and before you go, I'm gonna get dark in here, but someone in the audience also had a question, and they asked about Dahlak Oasis.
Yeah, Dakhla Oasis is where a lot of the early pastoralism, according to the data, was found. But they also found something recently of something that was a bit older in North Sudan. I think that was from 2020. But the Dakhla Oasis is what they found the beginning peak of pastoralism near Upper Egypt before it dispersed down. But they also found something else in northern Sudan.
Yep, Abu Talib, and then dark.
I just had a quick question for the brother Amir.
What up,
Earlier,
Aki?
okay, basically earlier I heard you speaking about the Natufians and stuff like that. I wanted you to basically shed some light on basically their relations with the Somali people in North Africa and the Natufians, if I'm not mistaken. I heard that the Somali people, basically, their descendants was the Natufians, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not really too well versed on that. If you got any knowledge,
Yeah,
could
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah, yeah. The
shed
Natuf,
some light on the relations through North Africa, Somali people, and basically the Natufians?
yeah, the Natufians, the Somali, the Bedouins of Yemen, Socotra, those groups, the people of a lot of places, the Horners, the pastoralist groups, all of them have that strong ancient Natufian-like signal. But the Natufian-like signal have its roots indigenously to North Africa anyway, because you got to think the Ibero-Maurusians are a bit older than the Natufians. So there was a directional angle of where it developed from, somewhere in between in the northern portion of Upper Egypt, in between probably Fayum or Upper Egypt somewhere before it split. Because you got to think the Natufians were an intermediate population between Basal Eurasians, ancient North Africans, and ancient North Africans that carried a lot of Omotic components before drifting. You get what I'm saying? So the Somali have a large component of that Natufian-like DNA. When they put their DNA in GEDmatch or G25, it shows it. It shows half of their DNA, or sometimes a larger chunk of half of it, or most of it, may be Natufian-like, and the other portion is Omotic-like.
So they got stronger relations with North African, like
Yes,
that area.
yeah, they have stronger relations with ancient North Africans than people in Western Central Africa. We're not really that. Even though we do have some Ibero-Maurusian in us, it's not to the larger extent like pastoralist Horners or people in North Africa.
Okay. And another thing I heard about was how the oldest skeleton was found in the Ethiopia, East Africa, Somali region. And basically, if they so do they descend from the North
No,
Africans or
no,
they
no.
related to them?
No, no, no,
That's
no.
not. Yeah, that's 150,000 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so they went back on Omo Man 2 that was found in Ethiopia. Omo Man 2 was 230,000 years old now when they estimated them. And these are modern Homo sapiens sapiens. These are not archaic Homo sapiens that was found like in Morocco, Jebel Hood. He was almost Homo sapien. He wasn't completely Homo sapien. He was an archaic Homo sapien. But Omo Man 1, if you look it up now, he went back further in time. He's 230,000 years old. So the earliest Homo sapiens developed in somewhere tropical near East Africa a very long time ago before we drifted north and went into other directions. But it wasn't a simple evolution for us, because if you think about it, the oldest Y chromosome that's found in Homo sapiens is found in Cameroon amongst the Imbo people. They're H00, and then the earliest clades of LO is in South Africa and in Tanzania and Botswana, which is the earlier clays of AOO. So whoever we are, we developed somewhere between the central eastern corridor of Africa.
Yeah. Thank you. I want to get Dark in here.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Dark was next. Go ahead, Dark.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Kush. Can everybody hear me?
What's up?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Peace Coin.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have a question for Amir. To the conversation before we were talking about pastoralism, you basically framed the argument or what you were saying in a way that made it seem like, where you said we're all, humans, right? We're all Homo sapien. We're all the same species, and in essence, right? Or to greater or lesser extent. And so basically, humans will, or us as a species, will adapt to whatever environmental pressures we have, right?
Yeah,
So if we have a culture of pastoralism, or we have a culture of herding cattle, then that's going to likely lead to a greater lactose tolerance, right?
correct.
That we see in populations like the Fulanis
Hmm.
and other or what is it, Kushites and whatever other
Yes.
other nomadic nomadic
Hmm.
Africans, right, for the
Yep.
most part. So
That's
what
right.
so my question to you is, if, let's say, a tribe or a culture that historically has not been or does not have a culture of pastoralism, right, or of herding cattle, if they decided today that they were going to start herding cattle, or that they're going to start pastoralism, right?
Hmm.
Would they over time, or would they eventually become or develop a greater tolerance to lactose? Let's say they're doing it for like hundreds and hundreds of years, for the same, or maybe even thousands of years. I don't know, however long it takes.
Hmm.
Just like the nomadic cultures such as the Fulani or the Somali, or whoever else
Hmm.
uh, have did in the past, to become as lactose intolerant as they're known to be today.
Hmm.
Could another culture of today start doing that and eventually become as lactose
Yep.
intolerant? Oh, sorry,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. I want to cut your wisdom. I don't know if you was finished, but yes.
Yeah. No. That was my question. Basically, I just wanted to know if they could
Yeah.
develop that lactose tolerance, right? Because I'm not. I've been pondering if it's more of like a genetic thing that's just like, I don't know, they just inherited it genetically, or if it's just purely like an adaptation to this
So,
cultural element.
so what happens when we get into biology, right? We look at the genes and how genes express itself. We go into alleles. Alleles is pairs of genes. Sometimes we can develop certain genes or certain traits that's beneficial for the organism to survive, right? So
Right.
if we have people, right? Let's say me right
Yeah.
now, my generation of people out here drink milk for 6 to 8 thousand years.
Right.
A few phases of the people are gonna get sick. They're gonna adjust. Some people may die in different
Right.
stages, but somewhere down the line, I'm gonna have a child, a great grandson and granddaughter that's fully adapted to it and develop certain traits that's
Yeah.
beneficial to deal with the lactase consistent gene. So that's all that shows. What I'm trying to get the audience in the world to see is that, to get out of this racist model, all humans, depending on what environments and different things they're doing, they can develop similar traits but be in distinct different environments. You get what I'm trying to say? So
Yeah.
so so like for example, the sickle cell strand in India, that's still developed from people who had to deal with fighting against malaria. but their strand is distinct from the strand that we have that developed the Benin strand of sickle cell that we developed in the wet Sahara. But yet, still, it's still sickle cell. You get what I'm
Right.
saying? So yeah, if we deal with milk and deal with it for thousands of years,
Right.
some people are going to get sick and not be prone to it. But down the line, someone is going to be selected through nature and time, natural selection, to
Right.
adjust to it and develop that allele.
I see. Okay. 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 Interesting. Thank you for answering my question.
Yep, yep.
Hey, last question, Amir. So like I've always had a question about E1B1A and how it made its way into West Africa. I've heard from various sources that you know I think it's originated somewhere in Ethiopia, but how it made its way to West Africa has always been like a mystery to me. Just give me your conjecture on what you think and why.
Well, I'm gonna follow Professor Irish, and
Mm,
I'm gonna follow Spencer Wells. When EV38 arose somewhere in between Northeast Africa, probably in between Eritrea, 42,000 years ago, before we formed into EB1A1 or whatever, a lot of
mm,
us went through the Sahel and went through the Sahara. We actually went up there with the Cormarusian culture, who was EP2, which was the predecessor of E1B1B and E1B1A. But
The
some of
what
them were
code?
already the Cormarusians. They stretched near Eritrea, the
Mm,
Cormarusian culture. And as
mm,
we went up there, some of these men became EM35. EM35 gave rise to EV68, but a lot of us still carry EV38, right?
mm. Right.
EV38 goes through the Green Sahara and it concentrates in between the Sahara and the Sahel.
Mm,
And then when the Sahara went through three phases, and I'm basing this on Professor Iris when he looked at the dental analysis of the Kefians and the people in the Bantus of Cameroon in different groups. So when you look at the Holocene glacier period, it's been a lot of it dried up. Some people were landlocked. So some
mm,
of these people developed. They crossed through the Sahel of the Sahara 19,000 years ago.
uh,
They developed sickle cell in the wet Sahara
mm,
around 8,000 years ago or 9,000 years ago, and then they dripped down as they became landlocked. They dripped down in open savanna probably around 7,500 years ago. So this is when E1B1A forms into the EM2 clade.
mm.
And then when we go down there, we mix with these older populations that never went north. They only stayed east, southeast to east, or southeast to west. And
Right.
that's the ghost population, who was very
Mm,
close to what was found in Jebel Hood or Elewu that was found
right.
probably 64,000 years ago. You get what I'm
Not to
trying to say?
interrupt, but you're cutting in and out. Could you repeat what you
Uh,
said for me?
so I'm saying West Africans are mixed too. Before we have these new ethnicities called Yoruba, Igbo, Fulani, we
Right.
represent something that's from a ghost population, and we
Hmm.
represent an early layer of early East African hunter-gatherers from 64,000 years ago, and then we represent Paleo-Saharan North Africans who gave us E1B1A. That's what we represent.
North
Yes,
Africa,
Paleo-Saharan North Africans, Paleo North Africans,
Paleo North
and they were called the
Africans,
Kefians. Yes.
Kefians. We talking about the Fisher culture
Yeah, you know
ones.
about them, and they were also responsible, according to Roger Blinch, the Runian cultures, which was the predecessor of Proto-Niger Congo.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
Because if you look at the Shamlanka grave, those men didn't have E1B1A. It was absent in sub-Saharan. And then look at the clades, like when we look at the PCA, like I'm
Mm,
EP252, which is E1B1A 7A. A lot of our clades of
right.
E1B1A is late. They're later mutations. But the earliest clades of EV38 is found in people of the Sahara. That's why you got to get that article called
Mm,
People of the Early Green Sahara.
okay. Okay. How did Proto Niger Congo groups end up like not replacing, but how did they expand?
Shit, they would look at once that stuff became landlocked, they had to find places to be. They were isolated. They had to find survival. When that Sahara,
No, like what gave them the advantage? What gave them
oh, they
the
technology.
advantage?
These people were technical. They wasn't like they had the bow, according to Roger Blanch. Later on, they developed thousands of years down the line. They dealt with metallurgy. They dealt with farming. Some of them are also pastoralists because you know about the Kefians and you know about the Tenarians. They had a lot of advantages
Right.
compared to the hunter gatherers that was in tropical West Africa when they got there.
The bow was in West Africa at the time.
A bunch of hunter gatherers, and a few of them were pygmies.
I said the bow wasn't in
Oh
West
no,
Africa
it
before
came from the
them.
Kefians. According to Professor Irish, it came from the Kefian population. The same people that you see in the Green Sahara cave art, Tassili cave art, Pheasant cave art. You see the bow, you see the round-headed art. That stuff exists before the
Mm-hmm.
round-headed art that Bantus used in Cameroon. You found it in the Sahara.
Dogs. How did dogs get into sub-Sahara? It was always
I
weird to
mean,
me. I read something about Roger Blanche that dogs also help the expansion of Niger Congo
they
languages.
did, but that goes to show you how a lot of animals migrate too. People know
Mm,
that, like the oldest camel ain't from Arabia. The oldest camels come from North America. Horses too.
right.
So animals migrate independently too, and we know that the first dogs was probably domesticated near China, if I'm not mistaken, which shows that they
Mm,
were shared. We know about the evolution of dogs and how they form. So there is no
mm,
telling how these people back migrated. Because we know some Cro-Magnon people had dogs, and we got to think there was a population of people that back migrated into Africa a long time ago, and they could have came in with the
mm,
first cases of dogs, possibly, or they drifted over there on their own. And these people that came in with
mm,
dogs, probably 23,000 years ago. I don't know if the species is that old; they might not be. But these humans that came back in 23,000 years ago mixed with the population that was already there, who were the Tyrian culture. And then you start to see this
mm,
art. You look at these damn wild dogs on a cave art in the Sahara. So Roger
mm,
Blanche makes sense. But look at the chicken. The
mm.
chicken isn't indigenous to Africa. The chicken is indigenous to India. But they started domesticating it
Right.
first near Israel in the sense of eating in the Bronze Age. Then it imports through
Right.
Egypt. And then through Egypt, the middleman in the Sahel was transporting it. Then it goes all the way to Yoruba land. Now look at the ancient Yoruba. Who were they getting their horses from? The ancient Mandinka. Who were the Mandinkas getting their horses from? The people in Mali. They was connecting with the Berbers in the north. Who was they connecting with? The people in the Middle East. So if you was part of the Middle
Right.
Eastern world at that time, that was the classical world of finances, bro.
Right. All right, bro. That's all my questions for now. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I have some questions for you. Some more questions for you, Amir. You briefly touched upon ghost population. You briefly touched upon ghost population in West Africa before, and I don't know if you can hear
I
me.
can
Can
hear
y'all hear
you.
me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. So basically, I wanted to ask, like, have we? Because every time like I look into this topic, I'm not able to like get a good. It doesn't seem like they have any idea what this ghost population could be. They know that they're not Neanderthals. They're not.
Mm-hmm.
They say that they may have actually preceded Neanderthals. So, do you think that is there any way we can know or actually have an idea of this ghost population and
I think based on
what? Yeah, no, like what they are, or who they are, who they're related to. Like, are we going to be able to narrow it down anytime soon? Is my
so when
question.
they looked at the MC1s of the Yoruba of people in West Africa, they found that they had 0.3% Neanderthal DNA, not a full 1%, but 0.3%. Those are traces. It's not even 1%. But what they were believing is
Right.
that they was believing that either came from something that was an intermediate group of humans who exist probably before
Right.
species left out of Africa, or it represents a population of people that back migrated into Africa with these genes 100,000 years ago. Because remember, in the Altai cave near, the Maltai cave near Siberia, they found those genes, Homo sapien genes, Y chromosomes in Neanderthals, which shows that there was a earlier out of Africa migration with archaic Homo sapiens before our successful out of Africa migration, right? And they had something that was similar
Yeah.
to A00 that was found in the people in Cameroon, uh, right?
Right.
Right. So this species, that's the ghost population. They call it ghost population because it's unknown for now. Now, based off that, they believe that it comes from the earlier phase of Homo sapiens that left out of Africa. Those earlier phases would have been probably similar to Jebel Hood that was found in Morocco, if we follow
Right.
that. And Jebel Hood in Morocco was an archaic Homo sapien. He wasn't modern Homo sapien, meaning that he was on the verge of becoming. He was something that split off before we became, because they also found the same type of skull that was found in Morocco and South Africa with something called Floresbad skull, right? 275,000 years old. So we had a bunch of intermediate Homo sapiens in Africa before we became modern, anatomically correct, full humans that we see right now. And we still not a fixed species. So whatever
Okay.
that ghost population was, when you look at Eleru that was found in Nigeria, it
Yeah.
survived in tropical Nigeria for up to 10,000 years. But whatever came, we had to either wipe them out or interbreed with them from those early East African hunter gatherers that were fully anatomically modern correct humans.
Right.
And they mixed with them. And then
Right.
later on, those early Paleo-Saharan North Africans went down and mixed with them. So this ghost population, I can only believe, and I think I'm right, and I may be wrong. I want to write a
Yeah.
thesis on it and send it to Christopher Springer or somebody. I believe that they
Mm-hmm.
were what Jabella Hood was, archaic Homo sapiens.
Oh, okay. I see. I see. Okay. Okay, I have another question. Okay, so you mentioned the intermediate Homo sapiens. Would Lucy that was found in Ethiopia, would she have been classified as an
No,
intermediate
she
Homo
wasn't homo. She wasn't
sapien?
homo yet. She was a predecessor of our species. She was a Australopithecus.
Oh,
She wasn't homo yet.
right.
The
She was
first human starts with Homo habilis, handyman.
okay. Okay, I got you.
So she was close, but she wasn't. She was still in the cuff, very close to our cousins. But I know some people don't agree with evolution on here, so I'm gonna leave that alone.
Okay, wait, but so she would have preceded the intermediate Homo
A-
sapien, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, she would have preceded that. And she would have preceded the species Homo. But we're part of the line that became us. She prepared for the line that became us. Assalamu alaikum, my kid.
Right.
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay, I got you.
Alhamdulillah. I see you, brother. Yeah, salam. Yeah, hello. Yep, hello.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah,
sorry.
yeah, I
So
got you.
yeah, so some people may not really fully accept evolution, but no, she wasn't Homo. The first human that starts with Homo habilis.
Okay, okay, all right, I got you.
So did Nilo-Saharans used to be all across the Sahel?
A lot of their traits is later derived. They were all through the Sahel at one time, but a lot of them went through their own downstream mutations as well. Even though they're very old, we're all the same age as a species, but a lot of our mutations can be recent or not as old. And as I said earlier, the humans that was in Africa 150,000 to 300,000 years ago would have been distinct because they did not develop a lot of later derived mutations that we have now compared to people that stayed in tropical zones and developed later downstream mutations. Because remember, radiation volumes damage DNA, which causes the mutations. So when you hit terms like polymorphisms, that's multiple mutations or multiple variations of these mutations within sub-Saharan zones. It's because they were developed in tropical zones. But you got to think, when humans split off and went into North Africa, they didn't have a lot of the later derived mutations that a lot of us developed much later in tropical zones.
Right, right.
So a lot of our Nilo brothers, linguistically, Nilo-Saharan is probably 24,000 years old, according to Roger Blinch. You had a lot of language isolates that went extinct that people no longer speak no more, but we still find gaps.
You say
That's
24,000?
what Roger Blinch said. That's one of his estimations. Some people may say
Damn.
34,000. So again,
Oh shit.
total Afro-Asiatic is 16,000. Niger Congo could be between 12 to 13,000 or 10,000. So it depends.
So Nilotic, well, I mean, Nilotic people are very, 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 old groups of people. I
Right.
mean,
Well, all of us are
they carry like a haplogroup,
right,
and they're very, yeah,
but they also went through a lot of changes. So you can have an old haplogroup, but go through a lot of changes. You get what I'm saying?
y-
Like
yeah, makes
nobody
sense, makes
stagnant
sense.
type stuff, right?
Yeah. No one stays stagnant because shit. Hell, I think like 14% of Falasha Jews in this Ethiopian got late clades of A, but they speak a Semitic language.
I wonder how different like modern Khoisan are from like Khoisan from hundreds of thousands of, like
I think they would have been drastically because you got to think before the sand was there first, then the Khoi came, and then when you look at
mm,
Hoffmeyer's skull that was found there, he looked totally different than the Khoisan who probably developed in the situ. So a lot of their traits is also later derived, but they carry older traits when it comes to the SNPs or haplogroups. See what I'm saying? They developed their own. They went through their own adaptations too, and then they went to the Kalahari
right.
Desert, and we know about Bloomberg's cave, the South African cave art going back 100,000 years, and then
Mm.
they developed in the Kalahari Desert. So some of their traits morphologically can be new, but they
Man,
have
it's crazy
older.
because like everyone references to Khoisan and said like the way they speak of them is funny. Like they'll say that the oldest humans they've been around in the same form
Right,
for like
right. As if
seventy
they have not,
thousand
as if they
years.
don't change.
Like they're the OG of humans. They've been around in that form exactly for
No,
seventy
no,
thousand. Like no, I know it's not true, but like it's just funny how that
yeah,
is like that belief is kind of like caught on
but
and became so
yeah,
popular. I don't know amongst the
and
youth.
they,
It's crazy.
and they basing it off childish things like haplogroups, and haplogroups only make up less than 1% of your DNA.
Mm.
So when you because they have old Y chromosomes, but they Y chromosome of A ain't different than the Imbo Y chromosome that's in Central Cameroon. They got A00. So we can't look at haplogroups and say that this is the determinant of the oldest population. They have deep ancestry and lineages that's oldest, but autosomally there's been a lot of changes and adaptations that occurred. And they may
Mm.
carry old lifestyles, but those lifestyles been moving from place to place, from Bloomberg's Cave to the Kalahari Desert. They match with the Sandawi groups in East Africa at a higher percent, which shows that they wasn't always there. Then when you look at the Hofmeyr skull, he looks closer to ancient Upper Paleolithic Europeans. That's why I said earlier, some of these Europeans got older traits in their morphology than some of the traits that tropical Africans developed that's later derived. People are not ready to accept that. Not saying their skin color. I'm talking about certain traits that they have, like their molars and certain things when it comes to certain anatomies that they have.
Mm.
Mentioned before, Amir, though, you were talking about the Nilotes and Khoisan. You said you were like, I think you were listening to a Sudanese or South Sudanese or something like that, an individual Sudanese descent, and you're like looking at their facial
They look like
features, and
Khoisan. They do.
yeah, I was just about to say, you said that you were likening them to the Khoisan, and you said they resemble Khoisan
Hmm.
far more than like a Yoruba or Igbo, or I guess a traditional West African type, right?
Yes.
So I was wondering, like, what was your? Because I know, your whole thing is like, okay, we shouldn't go off of looks, or we shouldn't go off of skin tone or anything like that, right? Lookerism, right? So
Hmm.
what was your like overall point with that particular observation?
Oh, I was just trying to say how we can't look at skin and say because people have a shared skin color that they are morphologically the same. Like
Right,
when Europeans see these people, they call them black, and that's all people get bannered as because of their dark skin is black. That's kind of a problem. Now, and I'm not saying I do believe from skulls that's been found, the Khoisan and some layers of their face to the largest amount have the oldest traits of what Homo sapiens look like. Look at the
right.
reconstruction of Jabella Hood. Look at what he looked like around the eye, the epileptic eye fold that he have, and the nasal passage, and look at his molar. And then you look at the core, and then you look at the Upper Paleolithic Europeans. You gotta remember when Khoisan was categorized at one point. They used to call them capoid outside of the Negroid taxonomy.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you're basically,
I don't know where that's at, bro.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What service does
Saying,
that actually? I'm
wait.
listening.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But are you basically saying we should put more emphasis, or you're basically saying look beyond the skin tone, right? Like,
I'm saying look beyond the skin. I'm trying to show the world that every group of people on this planet
yeah.
carry traits of older humans. Like, for example,
Right.
sub-Saharan Africans carry a lot of traits of what older Homo sapiens had. Not
Right.
fully, because some of our traits is later derived, but we also carry traits from earlier Homo sapien populations. You get
Right.
what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the closest population that I believe that earliest, and I could be wrong, the earliest Homo sapiens look like is Aborigine Australians. We need to look at them, look towards them, because when you look at the hair shaft of early Homo sapiens, 200,000 years ago, that was found in the Hyena cave, it was at shaft 54. Shaft 54 is intermediate between tropical African and European, which is curly, which is
Mm,
the typical hair that you find in Aboriginal Australia. So early humans with dark mahogany brown skin with curly hair.
right. Okay. And you make a distinction between curly and, let's say, the kinky of like
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
So you make a distinction there, right?
Yeah. I'm saying that hair is later derived based off the sea
Oh.
allele. That hair developed in the tropical zones. You got to think, people remain in tropical zones with higher volumes of radiation. We know that that type of hair breaks off, and it doesn't produce as much oil, right? It
Right.
breaks off, so you got to keep it moisturized. You got to also look at the content of people that's highly darker skinned. They get ashier, or it shows. Everybody get ashy, but it shows more. You got to think that where did these people develop these traits at that's later derived? In strong, higher volume radiation tropical zones, which shows that based off the hair shaft, earlier humans couldn't have had hair like this compared to people that remain in those zones for thousands of years to accumulate this later derived C allele compared to the A allele that's much older.
Right. So you're basically saying that curly, in your opinion, like curly-ish hair may have preceded kinkier hair
Yes,
types,
yes,
right?
yes.
So kinky hair is like a later adaptation to the sub-Saharan environments.
Yeah, as they remain there for thousands of years, climate, but different volumes of radiation. Yes,
Mhm.
that's fully later derived. I think the earliest humans' hair was like Aboriginal Australians.
Right, right.
They have more of like a wavier sort of, well, like you said, curly sort of hair type. That's, it's not like coiled. If you look at most sub-Saharan Africans hair type, well, excluding the horn, of course, it's the very, very tight coils. You know what I mean? It's very distinct from what people would look at as like like a silky, curly type of hair texture, right? And it's counterintuitive, right? Because I think people are of the idea that like the more tightly coiled it is, sort of the older it is, right? Like the more the greater it should date back to, or the older it is, right? But you know what I'm saying? This is interesting, right? Because we don't often think that the straighter or the looser hair texture could precede the tighter, more coiled hair texture, because that is like, I feel like it's tied to like Caucasians, right? Or it's tied to sort of a Caucasian phenotype. And as we know, Caucasians are known to have derived later than people who have like tightly coiled hair and whatever, right? But this is interesting because curly hair is like an intermediate. It's not quite straight. It's not quite like very kinky. It's like an intermediate in between. So to say that what would typically be perceived as an intermediate actually preceded what would be seen as the oldest, or what was previously seen as the oldest, which is kinky, very tightly coiled hair, is an interesting theory, I should say. So that's very fascinating to think about.
Also, so is that a reconstruction of Proto-Niger Congo, or is that a Kithian? Oh, is he gone? I guess he's gone.
Yeah, guys. I think he left, but yeah, you guys want to continue, or you guys want to just continue to discuss? It's hardly up to you guys. Yo, Zuko, you there?
Yeah, one Mario.
Yeah, bro. What you don't smacking your teeth, man. Fuck.
Tired, fam.
Follow your boy for more of that wild, stanky, baby making issue can't get anywhere else.